All right, welcome in everybody to another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time we're going down a rabbit hole,
Uh-huh.
and it's a deep one.
Okay.
This one is going to be focused on Patrick Bowler,
Right.
also known as Paramahamsa dasa.
Right.
We're going to be looking into his connections with the Science of Identity Foundation, SafeF.
Okay.
We've got articles, forum posts,
Wow.
even court documents.
Really?
Buckle up.
It sounds...
That's a long one.
Yeah, this is going to be a fascinating case.
Yeah.
Because we're not just talking about a controversial spiritual organization,
Right.
but also potential criminal activity.
Right.
So we're trying to figure out, was Bowler just a donor or was he something more?
Yeah, and this is where things get interesting, because Bowler went by many names.
Oh, really?
The Guru, Top Hat, even a misspelling of his initiated name, Das Paramahamsa. But one thing that stands out is that he was convicted in the U.S. for dealing a massive amount of drugs.
Oh, wow.
120 tons of marijuana
Seriously.
and 25 tons of hashish.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Wow, that's not small-time stuff.
Not at all.
What I find really intriguing is that despite this conviction, the judge's sentencing notes mention how he was helping others in prison.
Huh?
He was leading these meditation classes, teaching yoga,
Really?
contributing to a more peaceful environment.
So it's almost like he was living this double life.
Yeah.
Like on one hand, he's this convicted drug kingpin.
Right.
On the other, he's this spiritual guide promoting peace and mindfulness.
Yeah. How do we reconcile those two?
Right. And that's the puzzle we're trying to solve here.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the SEF,
Okay.
the organization that is led by Chris Butler, who also goes by the name Siddhaswarupananda.
Right.
Now, the SIF has a complex structure.
Yeah.
Some former members have said that it's got like a strict hierarchy, almost like a higher caste.
Higher caste. What do you mean by that?
So it sounds like there is this small group within SIF that holds like a disproportionate amount of power and influence.
Okay.
They're the ones making the decisions, controlling finances, and dictating the direction of the organization.
Interesting.
So now, where does Patrick Bowler and all of his wealth fit into this?
Yeah.
This higher caste system?
Well, that's where the lines between, volunteer work and SIF activities and their private businesses,
Right.
it all gets really blurry.
Yeah.
And this is where Bowler's money comes into play.
Uh-huh.
He was a significant financial backer of a SIF boarding school in Baguio City, Philippines,
A boarding school.
back in the late 1980s, yeah.
It sounds like this is where things potentially take a darker turn.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is an allegation
Yeah.
about a potential drug factory being connected to the school,
Hold on.
raising concerns about potential child labor.
A drug factory connected to a school run by a spiritual organization.
I know, yeah.
That's a serious accusation.
It is, and when you connect that with Bowler's history, it does raise a lot of questions about the source of his wealth
Right.
and the SIF's potential involvement.
It certainly does paint a very concerning picture.
Yeah.
And to add another layer of complexity to all of this,
Okay.
we have Tulsi Gabbard.
Right.
Now, the school's director was Tamayo,
Yeah.
who was the uncle of her first husband.
Oh, wow.
And Tulsi herself spent time at this school.
Huh. Okay, so that adds another whole
Another layer.
dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of connections, that's where we start to see a possible link to a company called QNet,
Okay.
which has faced numerous accusations of being a pyramid scheme.
Right.
Now, it's important to note these haven't been definitively proven in court,
Right, of course.
but they do raise serious questions.
Absolutely. We got to be objective
Yeah.
and present all sides of the story.
For sure.
Even the possibility of a pyramid scheme linked to a spiritual organization, it's alarming,
Absolutely.
especially when you consider that former SIF members have alleged that Alan Tibby Acharya Das,
Right.
who's a close associate of Chris Butler,
Yeah.
was involved with both the school and QNet.
Yeah. And Tibby initially denied any SIF affiliation,
Right.
but there's evidence that suggests his involvement.
Right.
So that does raise concerns about transparency
Yeah.
and potential hidden agendas within the organization.
So it seems like we're just at the tip of the iceberg here.
Yeah.
We've got a convicted drug dealer funding a school with alleged ties to a pyramid scheme,
Right.
all under this umbrella of a controversial spiritual organization.
Yeah.
And the fact that a political figure like Tulsi Gabbard was connected to this school, it's perplexing.
It certainly is. And to fully understand this complex web of relationships,
Yeah.
we need to delve into QNet, its ties to SIF,
Okay.
and the experiences of those who were actually involved.
All right, well, let's do that.
So QNet, it was initially called QuestNet,
Uh-huh.
And it operated primarily in the Philippines.
Okay.
Now, we've heard allegations of hundreds of unfulfilled orders from back then.
Wow.
Which raises some serious questions about their business practices.
Right, and especially how that impacted Filipino customers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Might have lost money.
Yeah, it really doesn't paint a very good picture.
Right.
And especially when you consider the potential exploitation,
Yeah.
of vulnerable people.
Right.
And the fact that it's all under this umbrella of a spiritual organization.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be all about ethical conduct.
Right.
As a major red flag.
Yeah. And, if we're looking for a figure who kind of embodies this intersection of spirituality and questionable business practices, look no further than Joseph Bismarck, also known as Japadas.
Right.
He was deeply involved in QNet and held a prominent position within SIF.
And his story is really interesting.
Yeah.
He was actually arrested in Jakarta.
Oh, wow.
For his activities related to QNet.
So despite his involvement in these potentially unethical financial dealings, he often emphasized truthfulness in his teachings.
He did.
Urging his followers to be open and honest.
Right. It's such a stark contrast.
Yeah, it's like, on one hand, he's calling for honesty and transparency.
Right.
And on the other hand, he's allegedly involved in a company that's accused of very deceptive practices.
It makes you wonder about his motivations.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Were they really aligned with what he was claiming to uphold?
Yeah. And it also makes you think about, the level of awareness or involvement of other high-ranking SIF members.
Right. And this is where we have to kind of address Chris Butler.
Right.
Who is the leader of SIF.
Yeah.
And he has portrayed himself as the sole true successor.
Oh, really?
To A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami.
Okay.
Who is the founder of ISKCON.
Right, the Hare Krishnas.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's saying that he faced this violent opposition from corrupt figures within ISKCON.
Okay.
Kind of painting himself as a martyr.
Huh. Interesting.
However, historical records show that Bhaktivedanta Swami himself criticized Butler for his teachings.
Oh, really?
Which deviated from traditional interpretations.
So there's a bit of a clash there between the Butler's portrayal of events and the actual historical record.
Right. It sounds like he's maybe trying to legitimize his break from ISKCON.
Could be.
And establish his own authority.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. And we can't forget about the allegations from former SEF members.
Right.
Who have talked about a culture of fear and control within the organization.
That's not good.
Where Butler's word was law.
Really?
They talk about this psychological manipulation.
Yeah.
Constantly being told they're flawed.
Oh, wow.
And that they need his guidance to achieve salvation.
Yeah, that kind of environment can really make people vulnerable to exploitation.
Absolutely.
So, it's important to be cautious with labels.
Of course.
But there are former members who still believe in the core principles.
Right.
Even if they disagree with Butler's leadership.
So it's a really complex situation.
It is.
With lots of different perspectives.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that behind the controversies and allegations, there are real people whose lives have been affected both positively and negatively.
Right.
And their experiences really need to be heard and acknowledged and respected.
Right. And those stories are essential to understanding the complexities of this organization.
Absolutely.
And speaking of complexity,
yeah,
we can't forget about that boat accident in Hawaii back in 2015.
Oh, right.
Where Sri Shim was killed.
Yeah.
And Trey Albrecht was seriously injured.
Yeah, and the driver was identified as Cy Hansen, a member of SIF. But some people, including a fellow SIF member, Rama Ranson, believe that Hansen might not have actually been driving the boat.
Wait, are you saying he potentially took the fall for someone else?
Potentially.
What would be the reason for that?
Well, that's the big question. And here's where the SIF influence and the political connections really come back into play.
Okay.
Mike Gabbard, a prominent politician and devout SIF member, was serving in the Hawaii State Senate at the time.
Okay, so are you implying that Gabbard might have used his political influence?
Potentially, it's all speculation. Yeah. But it's a theory that has been circulating.
To protect the real driver.
Wow. And remember, this wouldn't be the first time Gabbard has been accused of using his position to benefit SIF.
Okay, so we have this tragic accident with whispers of a potential cover-up.
Yeah.
Potentially influential politician linked to the organization.
It's a lot.
And a whole lot of unanswered questions.
For sure.
This is getting more and more intriguing.
Yeah.
What else could possibly be connected to this?
Well, believe it or not, the story actually gets even more bizarre.
Okay.
we're now entering the realm of a missing princess.
What?
A movie production company.
A missing princess.
And allegations of money laundering.
How could that be related to any of this?
Well, if you recall, Alan Tibby,
Chris Butler's close associate?
yes, back in the early 1990s, he was involved in a movie production company called Tail Leaf Productions.
Tail Leaf Productions. Didn't they produce the film The Lost Prince?
They did, yes.
About a missing princess?
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more suspicious.
Okay.
There were allegations that the movie was actually a front for money laundering.
Oh, wow.
Which led one investor, Santos, to pull his $600,000.
Really?
Because he didn't want any part of the negative publicity surrounding the project.
Wow, this just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
It does, and it really suggests that we're dealing with an organization that operates under a veil of secrecy and has been accused of various unethical practices.
So we've gone from a convicted drug dealer funding a SIF-run school to allegations of a pyramid scheme, a possible boat accident cover-up.
Yeah.
And now a movie production company potentially involved in money laundering.
What a story.
This is wild.
It is, and we haven't even scratched the surface of the philosophical and theological complexities of SIF.
I know, right? It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
But before we do, we need to take a moment to just reflect on what we've learned. This isn't just about scandals and allegations.
Right.
It's about the human impact.
Absolutely. You know, we need to remember that behind every accusation and every headline, there are individuals whose lives have been affected.
Yeah.
Their stories are a crucial part of this whole narrative.
Absolutely. And we will continue to explore those in the final part of this deep dive.
For sure.
Stay tuned because there's still much more to uncover about the SIF, its controversies, and the impact it's had on the lives of its members. So, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into this pretty crazy world of Patrick Bowler and the Science of Identity Foundation.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Before we wrap things up, let's bring it back to those human stories that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
You know, what happened to the people who are deeply involved in SIF, especially the ones who felt maybe harmed or disillusioned by their experiences?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really crucial aspect of understanding the long-term impact, you know, of SIF and all these controversies. Some former members obviously remain, you know, really devoted to the teachings.
Right.
But a lot of others have spoken out
Right.
about feeling manipulated or financially exploited or emotionally scarred.
Yeah.
And it's so important to give space to those voices, you know, to really understand the full spectrum of experiences within the organization.
Their stories really do matter.
Absolutely.
And it adds another layer to that question we kind of posed at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Was Bowler just a wealthy donor? Or was there something more at play?
Yeah.
Knowing what we know now, it's hard not to see those connections between, you know, his past, his wealth, and these allegations against SIF.
Yeah, and that convergence of factors is really what makes this story so compelling, right? You've got this convicted drug dealer funding a school with alleged ties to a pyramid scheme, all under the, you know, the umbrella of this spiritual organization led by this charismatic but controversial leader.
Yeah, and the political connections.
Right, don't forget those.
And the cover-ups.
Yeah.
And the former members.
Yeah, it's just a really perplexing and unsettling situation.
It really is. And, you know, it's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Yeah.
Each layer reveals something.
More and more unexpected.
More unexpected, yeah.
Yeah, and it just keeps going.
Where do we go from here?
I know, it's like, where does it end?
Yeah.
What happens next for SIF? What happens to the people that were involved?
Right, and the people who are still searching for answers.
Right, exactly. Like, will there be further investigations into their activities?
Yeah.
Will more people come forward to share their stories?
Right.
And how will all of this affect, you know, Tulsi Gabbard's political career, given her, you know, family's long-standing connections with the organization?
It's a story that's just it's not over.
It's far from over.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to just really emphasize what we've learned here.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a reminder to approach any organization, especially ones that are claiming some kind of spiritual authority, with a healthy dose of, you know, skepticism.
Yeah, skepticism and critical thinking are so important.
Absolutely.
You know, blind faith can be really dangerous.
Yeah.
You got to ask questions.
Right.
You got to seek out evidence. You got to consider, you know,
Different perspectives.
different viewpoints. You can't just accept things at face value.
Right. Do your research.
Right. Exactly.
Come to your own conclusions based on all the information.
Yeah, exactly.
Well said. That's a great takeaway for our listeners.
Yeah.
Well, on that note,
Yeah.
we've reached the end
I know.
of our deep dive
Already?
into the world of Patrick Bowler and the Science of Identity Foundation.
Oh, what a journey.
We hope you found this exploration informative,
Yeah.
even if it raised more questions than answers.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's a complex story with lots of threads to untangle.
Definitely.
But by examining these connections, by listening to those stories,
Right.
and by approaching the information with a critical eye, hopefully,
Right.
we
Hopefully.
can all gain a deeper understanding
Yeah.
of this controversial organization and the impact it's had.
Absolutely.
And that's what the deep dive is all about.
That's what it's all about.
Encouraging you, our listeners, to keep exploring,
To keep questioning.
and keep diving deep
Keep diving.
into the complexities of the world around us.
Yeah, keep learning.
Until next time,
Yeah.
stay curious.